What about now? Can you hear me now? What about now? No, I guess not. What? Okay, so this should be working fine. That's really weird. Oh, you hear me now? That's weird. Okay. Huh? Okay. I mean, I didn't change anything just now, so it's weird that you hear me now, but not before. But yeah, I guess... Okay. I don't know what that was about. Wait, hang on. Let me just try something. I think I might actually know what it was about. Tell me if you stop hearing me. When I do... wait, that didn't succeed. When I do... this. Did you just stop hearing me? Or... did that... Can you hear me now? Or am I now gone again? So, greetings. Can you still hear me? Somebody tell me in the chat if you can still hear me. Okay, that's okay, so it's not that. That's weird. Okay, I have no idea why the audio wasn't working for a while then. But anyway, maybe it just took a while for the audio to go live or something. I don't know. Okay, so yeah. Let's see. So Elias, how am I? I'm sort of sleep deprived, but aside from that, I'm alright. I only got 6 hours of sleep. Yeah. Any questions for me? Doesn't have to be about singing, by the way, in these live streams. You can ask me about singing, or you can ask me about anything else. You can ask whatever you like, and I'll say whatever I want, and we'll see how that goes. Let me see. Let me see if the audio. If it's the audio devices actually. Hang on. If I turn on the audio monitor, will I be able to hear myself? No. Interesting. Okay. But then I guess I do know what happened. This is my fix. It took a while to actually work. But I don't know why that happened. But for some reason, the audio devices just sort of got disabled. If I do this, then maybe the audio monitoring will work again. Oh no, what happened there? Hang on, let me see, can I hear? No, still can't hear anything if I do this. What about this? No, still can't hear. Okay, I can't, like, the audio monitoring is not working for me. It's strange. Yeah, there's definitely something weird going on with OBS right now. But anyway. Yes, where can we read about the acoustics? Oh, well, so this is a page I like to use, which is called UNSW or something. Let me just see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. So there's this page, and then there's basically anything Ingo Zietze. Principles of Voice Production, his 2008 non-linearity papers, but he also has various other papers that are very much worth reading. What's your favorite musical, if you have one? Good question. bit of a boring answer, but it's probably actually Phantom. Um, yeah, I think it's actually Phantom. Although I like Evita as well, which is weird because I'm about as far away from being a Paranist as you can possibly be. But um, anyway, and understand the science is a smarter one sources. If you want to get smarter, there's a series of 5 books I'd recommend for getting way smarter. But you have to like approach me in the Discord about those. um, but if it's specifically about music, I really recommend actually a book called Tuning Timbre Spectrum Scale by William A. Cetheris. Now it's a bit hard to get access to that book because it was never printed in like large quantities. It's quite academic, so it might cost a lot of money. I got mine for how much is that in dollars? It's like almost $200, and I think that was a used copy. um, or maybe it wasn't. Anyway, it was just it's an expensive book, but it's very good. It's very good for understanding music more. And yeah. But for well, I mean, so that's gonna help both with vocal science and music theory. It's sort of just a way of understanding how music works. But it's probably slightly more useful for music theory than vocal science, actually. But I found it useful for both. Aside from that, watch my videos, I guess. And so there's in my Discord server, there's the Septivium thing, where no, not the Septivium, the Symposium. Why did I give these so similar names? Anyway, there's a Symposium where you sort of progress through stages of autodidact study, but there will be like helpful sources linked, and there'll be like a list of words to research and so on. And you could try using that to get the hang of vocal science and such. Hello, Zach. Nice to see you here. Let's see. What do you think the dark forest theory in 3-body? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Anyway, any more questions? It would be a shame if we're already running out of questions. Yeah, it's a very lively Discord too. It's very nice. And when there are like about 300 members, I will start a Septivium event. Just hopefully, no, not. Why do I keep saying Septivium? I will start a Symposium event to hopefully like get the ball rolling on that, and why do I sometimes find coordination? Why do I sometimes find coordinations, use them for a couple of days, then lose them for no particular reason at all? Even trying to use the cues I learned from doing the coordination for a couple of days. Well, so that's basically your sort of, using, to borrow and is still term, your attractive states. Well, this isn't how they would use it, but your attractive states will vary a little bit. Like there will be some days where your energy levels are a bit lower or a bit higher than usual, where maybe your soft palate is drooping a bit more or a bit less, and there will be these little differences in your sort of default technique. And sometimes these might line up to make a coordination easier, and other times they might make it harder. And as you like learn to access a wider range of coordinations, this will happen less and less. So there is that. So basically, it's about parameters that you either don't have sufficient control over or haven't quite realized are implicated in this coordination, and then those parameters will have changed a bit between the periods where it's working and the periods where it's not working. How was your experience doing the CBT certification? Did you do 1 year before there's like a little heart button that's overlapping with the rest of the text, and I can't move it. It's very annoying. Did you do 1 year before the 3-year teacher thing? I didn't actually. I just had a bit of familiarity with CBT teachers. Now it turned out that those CBT teachers were better than, like, considerably better than average CBT teachers. I'm not sure I would really recommend it. As sad as I am to say that, it's it has some problems. The both CBT and the certification program, and I might be a bit premature in this, but I think it has already peaked. Well, it might get more widely known about. It is pretty widely known about already, but it might get more widely known about, but the quality will probably decline from here. That's what I'd guess. So, but how was my experience doing it? So it started out quite nice. I learned a lot in the first seminar, like the first out of the 18. I learned basically the distinction between chest register and call register, which I thought was a distinction between edge and overdrive. That turned out not to quite be the case. So I learned that, and that was very useful. I liked a lot of the people I was studying with, especially like maybe I shouldn't pick favorites just in case any of them might listen. It's so apparently there had been some sort of feud and whatever. At any rate, there were a lot of instructors that had left a little bit before I joined, and a lot of them were, from what I gather, some of the better instructors. Now there were 2 instructors that I really liked, Christina and Anna, and I hear good things about Matthias Owen as well, but I haven't had him as an instructor much, so I can't really say. But Christina and Anna are great. Any more questions? Yeah, so I mean, there's a little bit of well, I have heard sort of mixed perspectives, honestly. It's definitely less open to less open to debate. There are fewer debates than there used to be. I've talked to some other CBT teachers who studied before me, and they were shocked by like how it's a lot less, like it's a lot more closed off on that front. It's a lot more like a system of like a closed system, I would say. Well, I mean, it's still a research institute that's doing research, which presumably they wanna update the system on the basis of. But aside from the sort of marginal areas like whistle register and stuff like that, which they're still looking into. Aside from that, it feels like a pretty closed system by now, and I don't think it's all correct enough to merit being a closed system. Happy belated Father's Day, Dad. And hello. Thank you, son. I'm working out with headphones on, listening to the stream. That's a good idea. Any more questions? The chat is not as active as it usually is. And let me see. Can I get like the list of, maybe if I just pull this up, I will get the list of not the list of viewers, but like the number of viewers. But I gotta log in apparently. Okay. Okay, so there's actually like as many viewers as normal. That's less active in the chat than normal. But that's alright. What would you say is the best way to approach nasality? Should you experiment with it, try to avoid it, or maybe avoid it in stuff like chest voice and use it in other coordinations? So nasality can be alright for sort of boy band kind of sound. Like if you're doing I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. You know, I have nasality there. I could also do it without nasality, and it would sound slightly less like a boy band. I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. You know, so it's really like how much do you want a boy band sound, and how much do you want these warm, full sound. What I suggest for approaching it is to practice adding and removing it. You should definitely learn to add it, because otherwise you won't be able to remove it reliably, and you should definitely be able to remove it reliably. That's a foundational skill. So in practice, both adding and removing it are foundational skills. Okay, so also, will you eventually cover rough vocal effects, and what would you be able to bring to the table in terms of rough vox stuff? Like, what would your approach be if you did start pursuing that? I will eventually cover it. Still gotta get a bit better at it myself before I feel qualified to cover it. But I will get there, and I will cover it. As for what my approach will be, I mean, it will. So I think basically all so the way I think about distortion, for example, is that there's always a combination of of like compression and a little bit of pushing, and the sort of more compression you have, the less pushing will be needed, but you will need both. Now, adding twang will reduce the threshold that's required, but twang is principally optional. You could get distortion just with these other two, even without the twang. But you can't get distortion with just one of these two, as far as I can tell. So it's pretty similar to Tony's model of like, compression, pushing, and twang as being the sources of distortion. Anyway, I'm just from a bit of experimenting around. It seemed to me like it was advantageous as well to have less adduction of the arytenoid cartilages compared to the vocal folds, and I don't usually, I pretty much never do that when singing, so that might also be why distortion has been difficult for me. And I can sort of see some reasons why that would be the case, but Greg is a bit skeptical, I think, of my reasoning there. But but we'll see. So it's definitely gonna involve some twang and compression and such. Which is pretty typical of distortion. It might also involve a bit of pre-tension. We'll see. I might have one if you got them in. Have you noticed someone singing sharp? Why might that be? So that's usually getting a lot of pharyngeal narrowing, and they would tend to cause you to go sharp if this pharyngeal narrowing is happening in a sort of uncontrolled manner. It can also happen from just being very tense, and you get into this thin, slightly mixy quality, and that will tend to get a little bit out of control. Summer doing a number on us, scorching our brain cells away. Damn. Wait, I shouldn't say that. I think like YouTube has some sort of swear word policy where it gets demonetized, or maybe it's actually a vulgarity policy. I'm not sure if saying damn it's gonna trigger it. I'm not that monetized yet anyway. I still need a few hundred more watch hours before I actually get ad revenue, and it probably won't be much. Anyway. I used to have issues going flat, and now I have the opposite problem. Yeah, just work on your chest register. It will solve all your problems. Well, okay, not all the problems, but it will solve a lot of these problems. Work on falling into this heavy, warm, dark quality. This kind of quality. ya, 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 ya. If you can do that, I mean, this is sort of prone to being, and very relaxed too, right? It's not ya, 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 which is the one that's sort of prone to going sharp, right? It's very slidey like this, right? And it's gonna be prone to going sharp, whereas it's ya, 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 ya. You can still slide with it, right? It's just sort of a little less slidey compared to the yeah, this kind of thing, right? Which sounds like a nervous voice, like this, and slides very easily, and therefore also goes sharp very easily. Anyway, actually, I should sit a bit closer to the microphone, probably, or just bring it a bit closer, just because I can. Let's do it like this. Okay. Should marginally improve the audio quality. Probably not much though. Yeah. When I sing a G4, it cannot decrescendo smoothly. It flips into falsetto, and I can't keep it smooth and sweet. What coordination are you using there? Because if you're using something like this, hey, hey, then the key is really just to open the mouth more and raise the larynx as you decrease the volume. Now that's a bit difficult at the G4 because it's already so open, but something like this. Hey! That was way too fast, but hey! Something like that. I don't usually do that at G4, but something like that. I go in curving while singing high sound, like quaky and tight. I want to be belty. So how high do you mean? Do you mean in this G4? This is like a bit of. I'm like looking at my appearance. It seems like no, it's nothing. Okay, but I had some sort of sauce there or something. It wouldn't make sense because I haven't eaten anything like that. Anyway, wait, what does forward placement mean in terms of how Reddit uses the term, whatever that is? As most people can't agree on what it actually is. So it's really mostly an attitude. Like all these sensations of like the sound vibrating wherever, that's irrelevant. Like just ignore that. The real part of placement, the kind you need to understand, and there actually is an important insight there. This real placement is basically, this is backwards placement and that's forwards placement, right? It's as simple as that. It's like an attitude, right? If you're singing like this, that's backwards placement, and if it's just like a big diva, that's forwards placement. It's like you will do a lot better than the Redditors if you think about it in those terms. But I guess there's also people are talking about how much twang there is, and that's where they'll feel like mask placement. That seems to have something to do with the superior constrictor. I guess it's actually not the paranasal sinuses they're feeling. I think it's actually the sphenoid bone, which is pulled on by the superior constrictor that can then like transfer acoustic vibrations. Ooh, I just remembered. How do you smile so wide? I find it really hard to smile to the extent that you do when singing. So it's partly a matter of having large lips, I guess. Although I mean they've stretched a little bit from singing, I think, so they got a bit larger. But yeah, you go wide first, I guess, because if you go vertical first, I have a hard time smiling from there. It's too like, because the lips have a certain length, a certain circumference, right? The circumference of the mouth doesn't change all that much. But if you go wide first, then you can sort of drop the jaw from there, and you can see how much can you drop it without losing the smile. And I can do about that much. Anyway, it's also related to the size of your head. So if you have a smaller smile, you may just have a smaller vocal tract overall, and then you won't need as much mouth opening, because the resonances will be higher because of the shorter vocal tract. Anyway, can you explain vocal compression and also the different types of holes that Greg has? I'm not sure I know exactly all of his types. I know some of them at least. So compression, first of the term compression just means, it literally just means narrowing as a reduction in area or volume. It means literally the opposite of expansion. So when we speak of compression in the context of singing, we're usually referring to compression of the glottis, right? People think it's the vocal folds that are being compressed. It's not, well, I mean, I guess the TAs compress the vocal folds because they like shorten the vocal folds. But when we speak of compression in singing, we're generally referring to compression of the glottis, the space between the vocal folds. So making the glottis smaller. And you can do this by, you can do this by squeezing the vocal folds tighter together. This is sort of usually what's meant by medial compression. That's the action of the lateral cricothyroid muscles. We can also speak of anteroposterior compression, the glottis shortening, lengthwise, and that's the function of the TAs. Now the TAs also add a slight bit of medial compression, but they mostly add the anteroposterior compression. And it's gonna sound like if you have a sort of compressed sound, it will sound something like so actually, like the medial compression, strictly speaking, when in the sense of the LTAs, that's basically what Greg calls creak tension. But when we speak of a compressed sound, we actually usually mean, and I think this comes from rock or something, and it just feels intuitive to call the sound compressed. But we actually mean something like, oh, right, this sort of rough, almost rough quality, right, that you might use in every time I look in the mirror, as opposed to every time I look in the mirror, right? And that compressed quality there actually features both TA and LTA activation, and it features a reduction in supraglottic impedance relative to the source impedance. Basically, it features it does feature stretching and thinning of the vocal folds, because I'm going into mixed-wise there, but it also features a squeezing together of the vocal folds. That's a creak tension, and it also features just a little bit of grandpa voice. So yeah, that's basically it. And that's sort of what compression usually means in a rock context or in an online voice teaching context. Anyway, the different types of holes that Greg has. So he has the creak tension, and he has the grip. I guess. So grip basically refers to the TA activity. Now it's not quite clear to me whether he only means the active TA activity after, like when you're actively like increasing the chestiness beyond what is required for this impedance matching between the larynx and the vocal tract. There's like a level of TA activity that feels pretty instinctual, I would say, and varies with the vocal tract. And I'm not sure if he includes that in his concept of grip. I tried asking him about it, but it was a little bit difficult to get a clear answer. But I think those are his two main forms of. I'm not sure if he has others. Now there's also, of course, the interarytenoids, which I think tend to go along pretty well with grip, at least in my experience. But maybe they can be separated. So anyway, well, they probably can be separated actually. Anyway, could overtone singing be helpful or a good way to get into F2H3 tuning? Yes, absolutely. Overtone singing is gonna help develop your ear for where F2 is at, and it's also gonna help you practice varying F2 while keeping the overall sound pretty consistent, which is also a nice skill to have. Can you do a reaction to the song Last Stardust? So I'm kind of averse to doing this because I'm worried I might get copyright strikes. But what I can do is listen to like a short segment if you have a timestamp. But I won't be like sharing the audio. I'll just but I can comment on it. But you gotta have a timestamp, so it's not gonna interrupt the stream for too long. Anyway, so Yes, I'm trying to do that while also having a classical sound color. Let me see. Okay. So I guess in classical, if you're singing in that range and you're decreasing. Wait, do you sing like tenor or like do you sing like soprano, mezzo soprano, or like if it's a tenor sound, right? You typically be going in a mixed voice direction for pianissimo in this range, right? And you hear that, for example, in le telefono di you know, that's not chest voice they use at the top there for the pianissimo, right? They use sort of more of a Bach Baroque style. Well, I don't know if there's really such a thing as a Bach Baroque style nowadays. I think like the style has gotten a little bit lost to history. I mean, we can sort of try to recreate it, which is what this historically informed practice is about. But I'm somewhat skeptical about some of their conclusions. So I don't know if you mean like historically informed practice, or if you just mean like the sort of contemporary interpretations of Bach. Well, I guess both are contemporary interpretations of it. But yeah. So what you need to do, if like, so I can tell you more about like how it will be done in like romantic period opera and subsequent periods. Well, I mean, if you're really doing it in a Baroque style, you'd be using like that's well before even the voce faringea took hold. So like, if you're actually doing it Baroque style, then you'd be using falsetto in like the G4 range. And at least for your softer volumes. If you're not doing if you're not using falsetto, then it's probably at least like this late bel canto style where you'd be using voce faringea, which should be easy enough to do a diminuendo from. So I suspect you're actually doing instead of that maybe a lighter voce piena in testa, where you basically need to go to kind of mixed voice quality. So if you have this if you have this kind of quality at the top, you basically need to go from there to this kind of restrained quality. You need to go into like what's called curbing in CVT. Yeah, you can practice those separately and then practice combining them. Yeah. Oh, neutral without air. That is stable. I guess you mean. Okay. Yeah. So like, do you mean falsetto, or do you mean like a modal neutral without air? Like, do you mean like something like that, or anyway? G4 sounds like edgy, not weak, but thin. Yeah, and you were talking about making the transitions. No, wait, you were talking about going high in pitch. Whereas you tend to go to curbing. Not weak, but thin. Okay. Yeah. So basically, to get the hang of your high notes, to make them sound more belty, you gotta work a bit lower first. You gotta make sure, like, as soon as you gotta like revisit the part, like the pitch range where you first start getting a bit of thinning. Now, very likely that will be A3. It's A3 for most people. If it's not A3, it's probably E4. But it's like it's quite probable that there's something subtle happening around A3 already. So if I go like right, I actually thinned out there at A3. You hear that, right? I have this kind of quality now, as opposed to this kind of quality, this kind of quality. right? So make sure that isn't happening, and it's a very subtle thing, but you gotta be like very, very assertive already by A3. And if that's not happening there, it's probably happening around E4, and at that point you can just sort of go shoutier with it or something for most vowels anyway. Well, I don't know if for most vowels, for open vowels anyway. Yeah. It would be easier if you had a link. Well, I guess maybe you can't post links in the comments, but okay, I'll try to. Oh my god, this UI, that's terrible. What are you doing, OBS? But okay, I will. So 110 to 140. Let me just see. Meanwhile, I just. Oh, here it is again. 110 to. Yeah, I'm hearing basically transitioning between call register and mixed voice. It's you know it's pretty fluent though. So it's fairly pharyngealized to make it brighter and lighter, and that also helps get some of that like smooth fluency. But yeah, it's really just it's really just transitioning between call register and pharyngeal voice. Maybe you need to book a session. Yeah, that would be cool. Gotta get going. I gotta drive home from the gym, but I'll be back in about 15 minutes. Okay, cool. See you in 15 minutes then. What are the physiological differences in terms of vocal fold length and vocal tract shape between a baritone and tenor? Oh yeah, somebody else also asked about voice types. I overlooked that somehow. And how to reduce hold above G4 without becoming falsetto. Well, you just so if you're above G4, so that's generally like this A4 area and above is generally a bit of a trouble area. It's quite difficult to learn. So first, make sure you have a very strong call register, like lower down. You should be able to hey, and you should be able to do that with no trouble. It should be very easy for you to do that. And once you do that, then basically to go higher with it, you just need to add twang to it. And a good cue I find here can be to think of making it screamy, right? So you can go, let's take it a bit higher. Hey! Morning voice. Man. Okay. Hey! Still morning voice. Anyway, but that's basically how you go about it. You just add this sort of you add a little bit of a twangy quality there, and you don't need a lot of twang. So just thinking a little bit screamy can be fully sufficient. Let's see. What are the so the voice types question. Dramatic. Well, so first of all, I'll talk about the dramatic soprano and coloratura soprano. So these are Fächer. They're not voice types per se, right? Fächer. That's the German plural of Fach, which is a German word, right? And it basically means subject or expertise or specialty, right? And these are not voice types; they're skill sets, right? So that's why you have things like a Spieltenor, which is basically a comedic tenor. Because like comedy isn't a voice type, right? It's a skill set. Like maybe like either you're funny on stage or you're not, right? Like either you know how to put on a funny act or you don't, right? And that's what the term Spieltenor means. It's just a way for the opera house to keep track of, oh, this guy is good at making the audience laugh. So we'll like keep casting him in the comedic roles. So it's just a casting guide. It's not really supposed to be your fate. It's just you often a person, like whether due to personality or just interest or just random facts about this training, will be a little bit better at some roles than others, right? But there are plenty of great opera singers who have some roles from spanning completely different fächer. So you don't need to think of that as a constraining destiny. Anyway, so physiological differences in terms of vocal fold length and vocal tract shape between a baritone and tenor. So I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe the sort of correlation strength and the effect size are both stronger when it comes to vocal tract shape than vocal fold length. Basically, the larynx is lower in baritones. The vocal folds are on average a little bit longer, but not nearly enough to account for the difference in range. And it seems to me from experience that the larynx has a certain way of assuming new resting positions, right? If you sort of get in the habit of raising it, eventually it'll just sort of stay there and rest there. And this also seems to be the experience of people who do voice feminization. Eventually they'll have trouble lowering it back down to its original position, and that will require a lot of muscular effort where they can keep it up without effort. And that happens after a while. So yeah, so the bigger effect size here is actually not very immutable. But yeah, it's there's a slight difference in average vocal fold length, but with plenty of overlap. And there's a somewhat larger difference in vocal tract length. You can also see like the vocal fold length is associated with the thyroid angle, which is basically like the angle between the two sides of your thyroid. How sharp this angle in front here is. The sharper that is, the longer your vocal folds. Because basically, as your vocal folds grow, your larynx doesn't grow evenly in all directions. It grows more in the anterior posterior direction than it grows laterally. So that changes its proportions a bit. Makes it sort of stretched forwards. Anyway. It seems that the higher, the easier it is to enter the lower density, right? Yeah, definitely. It can be done to like it's possible to take reduced density low down in pitch, but it gets gradually harder the lower you go. And if I do ooh, now I'm still in reduced density, but it's sort of difficult to maintain it down here at a C3 as opposed to a lot easier, right? So in the low range, fuller density is generally easier than reduced density, whereas in the high range, reduced density is generally easier than fuller. Anyway, more questions. Oh, there are only 4 concurrent viewers now. That's too bad. Why are people are leaving me? Really should have drank some tea before this. I'm plagued by phlegm right now. Well, YouTube says 6 live viewers. Oh, now we have 7. Great. So, any more questions? We're running out of questions, it seems. You can also ask me to like elaborate on like questions I got in previous live streams or like anything I've said so far, you know. Anything goes, really. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, if there are inappropriate questions or something, I will just like refrain from answering them. But you can always ask. How can one reverse vocal fatigue? Well, so it depends on like people use this term vocal fatigue, and it's sometimes it just seems like they mean a euphemism for like vocal damage, and sometimes they just mean genuine tiredness. But like tiredness, where are we talking about? Tiredness in the core musculature, or are we tired, or are we talking about tiredness in the interrhythmoids? I don't think there's a lot of kinesthetic feedback from the thyroidrythmoids or the LCA, so I don't think you'll actually feel fatigue there. But you might feel the fatigue in the interrhythmoids, which are somewhat larger and have more kinesthetic feedback. Then there's this fatigue in the respiratory system. Anyway, if it is fatigue, then you basically just need rest. You need food and rest. If it's not fatigue, like if it's a euphemism for vocal damage, for like, you know, hoarseness or straining the voice a bit, then you still basically just need food and rest, but you also need to make sure that you're not making the problem worse. Call register and yell timbre. Are you like asking what these terms are, or or just mentioning. Anyway, have you studied singing / music other than CVT? Yeah, so I was enrolled in the musicology major with performance in the University of Copenhagen, but I eventually quit. And I'm pretty strong on music theory and psychoacoustics. And I can play the piano not as well as I used to, but I'm learning it again. I can compose orchestral music, by the way. The intros actually, these sort of orchestral intros to my videos are made by me. I plan to offer a music theory course at some point. Haven't gotten around to that yet, but I'm actively working on preparing that music theory course. So there is that. But I have basically the curriculum. I just need to finish preparing the presentations and so on. Let's see. I remember you sang a song showing your jaw movements. You sang a song you said was dramatic, and it was "Change My Mind" at the end. How do you make that last note so effortless? Oh yeah, that would be Gethsemane from Jesus Christ Superstar. Now, before I change my mind. This one, right? How I make the last note so effortless. You just gotta practice chord register endlessly, I guess. So actually, I was talking about this recently with somebody who was having trouble getting the chord register, like removing Valsalva from the chord register, and it helps to start lower with that. So if you can do right, you wanna basically have a yawn on the way, but it's not coming. Or not a yawn, more of love and spirit or something. Anyway. Right. So basically, I'm relying solely on the change in vocal track shape. There's no effort here. It's just I'm just sort of making room for my voice to sort of pass up into this range. So there's still chord register at the top. It's sort of quiet, and then you can make that louder. And it's still basically no effort. You do that by just shaping the vocal tract very well, and relying on your vocal tract shaping rather than on force. Is flageolet good for the voice? Depends on the voice, I want to say. If you chronically have excessive breathiness and that's making you hoarse, then flageolet is good for the voice. If you're in a squeezing spiral, as I call it, then flageolet is probably not good for the voice. It's gonna squeeze your vocal folds a bit more tight. So I don't rely on flageolet tension or creak tension like for much of my singing at all. I practically minimize it, but I'm working on it more lately to get the hang of some whistle register and flageolet. I'm working on that these days. Gotta get those Dimash high notes so I can join a wider audience by doing a Dimash technique analysis video. I've been practicing increasing twang. I feel like I'm swallowing. I want to separate the sensation of swallowing from the constriction of swallowing, from the constriction of vocal tract. And it's just so the constriction of swallowing is twang actually, but the sensation of swallowing has more to do with the retroversion of the epiglottis, I think. So like it's actually like the constriction of the throat. That's the part you want to keep. It's the epiglottis, like the retroversion of the epiglottis you want to remove from it. So you also want to remove the at least be able to remove the medialization of the false swallows, like that quality that's also there in swallow. Like if you're a swallow, it basically combines this with the and the and the like all of these are combined in the swallowing movement, and it's basically just that last one that you want to get for twang without any of the others. But a way that can help is instead of thinking think like big, large, obnoxiously loud, this kind of open twang like this, and really rely on those R vowels, right? So that's the way I recommend practicing twang, not right? So don't make it small, make it big twang. Hang on, I gotta get something to drink because my throat is very dry. I think I didn't drink enough yesterday, and I haven't had anything to drink this morning. One moment. Okay. How old am I? I am 25. Yeah, I think I felt my LTA getting more tired if I've practiced for a long time. It feels awfully similar to after a workout, and your muscles are tired and won't move. Maybe it's something else, so it's probably the intra-retinoids, not the LTAs, I'd guess. The intra-retinoids are a lot larger and have more kinesthetic feedback, so it's probably them. Oh, now my viewers, half my viewers left while I was getting a glass of water. People really have no attention spans anymore, no patience. Anyway, but the rest of you are still here, hopefully. Any more questions? It's a bit of a slow day, isn't it? Okay, so there's no called timbre. So yell timbre is a term for tuning the lowest resonance of the vocal tract to the octave overtone. So that would be this resonance. So that sound there, I don't know if you can hear that or if it like got cut out by my noise gate. So you tune that to the octave overtone. So for example, if I have if I start with a closed vowel, right? Oh, and I open from there. There will be a sort of a point when I reach a sweet spot where the volume will increase. Oh, there it is. Right, so that would be yell timbre. Call register is basically a shouting voice. So chest register is chest register and call register together form chest voice, right? But chest voice can have a speech-like quality or it can have a shouty quality. The speech-like quality, that would be chest register. The shouty quality, that's call register. So if I talk like this, that's chest register, right? But if I talk like this, that would be call register. So that's basically that's the difference. And in like operatic tenors would use call register for the high notes and chest register for the low notes. Although there are some that use it for twangy call register for the entire range. most notably the Lomonaco school, which says to cover the entire range. That basically means use call register for the entire range. And though I personally am not too keen on the sound of doing that. You have so many questions. Well, ask them. You can take up the chat. It's fine. Like, as long as other people gotta ask more questions if they wanna, because I feel like I'm always running out of questions here. So ask all your questions by all means. There are some don't worry about being about leaving room for other people. They can just jump in with their questions. I'd rather have people fighting over the chance to ask questions and have no questions half the time. Yeah, there are some high notes at the end of a song called Corelia. The sound of glaciers moving after the final chorus. Would be cool to hear you break down the kind of technique being used. Genre is probably very far from your natural wheelhouse, though. Wouldn't be too sure of that. It sounds like it might be some sort of power metal or something. That's not too far off from. Let me see. Do you have a timestamp though? That would be nice. This is nice. Yeah, I would need the timestamp because I can be hunting through it while there are questions. Anyway, do you think there's such thing as a need to strengthen muscles like the LCA and IA, or is it mostly if the vocal tract is in the right place, the sound will come out? I don't think there's much strengthening involved in the usual case, but you can have atrophy of the intrinsic laryngeal muscles, and that could require a need to sort of retrain them. But aside from that, it seems to mostly like strengthening the muscles seems to mostly impact your stamina and not so much your the absolute capacity of the skills you can learn. If the vocal tract is in the right place, the sound will come out. Well, you also need sometimes some laryngeal adjustments to facilitate that. Anyway, when I try and practice the A4 in M1, I get a creak and struggle with keeping the adduction against the subglottal air pressure. Why is this happening, and how can one rectify it? So creak is not there's not a lack of adduction against the subglottal air pressure. It's more like the opposite, like too much adduction relative to the air pressure. So I'm guessing you're going to be doing it in something like a mixed voice kind of thing. My favorite exercise, my favorite syllable for working on mixed voice is go, and then you can just focus on getting twang right. Sleep deprivation is messing me up more than usual, but let me see if I can show what I mean. So you want to have this kind of sound. Go 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 go. I also have some creak here. Hang on. Go 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 go. My energy levels are too low for this today. Hang on. Go 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 go. That's probably about the cleanest I'll get it right now. So yeah, basically make sure you have enough twang and you're not doing it lazily like I just was. It's probably a twang issue. I feel like when I get creaking in sort of mixed voice quality, it's usually a twang issue, which is weird. I don't know how that works, but anyway, I should think about that, what that implies. So what's the difference between soprano and mezzo-soprano and tenor, baritone, and bass voices? Like how to teach another voice type. Okay, so basically these correspond to very deep differences in vocal technique. Like there are anatomical correlates, but I don't think it's mostly the anatomy. Well, the anatomy may give you a propensity towards some like some one path or another in these, like with respect to these deeper differences in technique. But basses basically are in the habit of speaking in vocal fry half the time, right? So they'll be sort of talking like this, and then they'll be developing a great facility with transitioning between vocal fry and chest voice, right? And that allows them to get this huge booming bass voice. And you could do that even without being a bass. And there's like, you wanna have a certain depth to the sound, of course, and vocal fry is pretty intense in the treble content, so you wanna basically you wanna round it out a bit more. So you don't want to rely too much on the vocal fry, but theoretically, a high soprano could learn to sing in the bass range, and even with a certain power, but not necessarily as much depth as a bass can. But like the real difference here, like what makes a bass is basically this fluency with vocal fry and like transitioning into chest voice. Now, and that's true whether it's contemporary or classical. Now, aside from the basses, these terms sort of diverge a bit depending on whether it's contemporary or classical. So since you talked about Baroque Bach, singing, I guess you're a classical singer, so I'm going to give the classical answer first, but I'm also going to address the contemporary side of things, just for people who are interested in the contemporary. So. Tenor is supposed to be very skilled with the with singing above the passaggio, right? Singing in voce piena in testa if it's like a post-romantic tenor, or in voce faringea if not, right? And that's basically what makes a tenor voice in classical, being fluent with this upper extension. And now a baritone has worked more on lower notes, and not as much on this upper extension. So there's this idea that baritones have a lower passaggio. That's not really, that's misleading. They often cover lower, but that's just to unify the timbre more and to get more pleasant high notes. But it's not actually their passaggio. They cover well before the passaggio. The passaggio doesn't really depend on voice type in that way. It depends on your trachea, not your vocal tract, and the trachea doesn't vary between voice types. So baritone basically doesn't sing past the passaggio. That's what makes him a baritone. He doesn't sing past the passaggio. He sings in the range below the passaggio, and he may cover his high notes, but that's not the passaggio. That's basically the difference there. And now for soprano and mezzo sopranos. So mezzo sopranos have a lot of facility with what I call spacious head register, which is this kind of all these things I'm having to demonstrate while I'm sleep deprived. I should stop whining. Hang on. Right. Whereas a soprano would have a somewhat more narrow pharynx at this point. Now, a mezzo soprano must also know how to do that, because a mezzo soprano should be able to sing a bit higher than this G5, G sharp 5 range. But yeah, that's basically, that's the big difference there. The mezzo's habitual sound is a bit darker than the sopranos, and that gives them less easy access to the high range. And the soprano must usually have some facility with partial vibrations, just to be able to get the soprano E6, which you have in a lot of romantic repertoire, right at the end you have that. Oh yeah, that's great. Like some ending like that, some sort of ending where they jump up to that E6, like that romantic period cliché, and to be able to do that consistently, you need to have some facility with partial vibrations. So that's part of what makes a soprano. Anyway. So in contemporary contexts, these terms have a different meaning, right? So in contemporary contexts, it's there's like a Broadway baritone, right, which is basically somebody who has a sort of rich, chesty belting range. Somebody who belts rather than mixing, right? And a pop tenor, like a typical pop tenor, is basically just somebody who uses mixed voice a lot. And then a high tenor is actually the same thing as in classical, you know, a ligero, right? Who basically use a lot of pharyngeal voice, and that can provide a sort of androgynous sound even. So that's basically, you know, what Mitch Grassi is doing when he's not doing falsetto. Then he's doing pharyngeal voice usually. Although he's been experimenting a bit with chord register actually. Yeah, so and then, you know, baritone in contemporary context, I associate that mostly with jazz. You know, a smooth baritone. So there's like a baritone, sort of belty sound, smooth baritone, jazzy low sound. Bass baritone, same thing as smooth baritone, but a little bit more fried quality at the bottom range, allowing sort of more facility down to, let's say, a very, very solid E2 usually. And then a bass, again, as with classical, bass has a lot of facility with vocal fry and transitioning into chest voice. So you can go even lower than the E2. Yeah, that's all of that is technique. But these are deep technical differences, right? These are not like superficial things where you can just like easily adjust. So it is possible for a baritone to retrain as a high tenor. But the thing is, it's not just about learning to sing in the high tenor range, because like if you learn, and it's not even just to learn the technique the high tenor is using for the high tenor range, because if he does that, it will not fit with the rest of his singing, because there's no such thing as a bass baritone D5 belt, right? There's not a thing. Like no matter how he belts the D5, it will not sound like a bass baritone, because there's no baritonal sounding D5 belt, right? You can do a baritonery D5 belt, but not a baritonal D5 belt, and so like whatever he does when he's sort of learning that high range, he'll actually have to reinvent his entire singing in order for it to sort of fit together. And otherwise, like his habitual range will probably be hard to even unify technique-wise with the high pitch. So they'll be in a sort of antagonistic relationship where like practicing one makes the other sort of harder to access. So in practice, so voice types are still a thing, and they stem from these deep technical differences. But you can also retrain as a different voice type. Anyway, so that's my take, which is a funny place to land, because there's this like huge fight where people are arguing over whether voice types are a thing or not, and like one camp is saying that voice type is destiny, and maybe even that Fach is destiny, and the other camp says that there's no such thing as voice type, and as far as I can say, like both of these viewpoints is plainly incorrect. There is clearly such a thing as a voice type. I mean, there are clearly people who are baritones, and there are clearly people who are high tenors, and these are clearly not the same thing. But I also maintain that it is possible to retrain one as the other. Like it's possible for a baritone to become a high tenor, or for a high tenor to become a baritone. It just requires a sort of very deep technique changes. It's not as simple as just like learning to sing high or learning to sing low. You gotta basically reinvent the entire technique to change voice type. Anyway, how to build powerful low voice if one is a tenor, regardless of genre. My vocal cords creak below E3. Yeah, that means you're sort of missing chest voice. You're probably stuck in something like restrained. You gotta develop more like a warmer, more open, bigger sound, right? So if you're sort of doing something like come again, sweet love, doth now invite thy graces that refrain to meet you. You know, this is very introverted. It's really more of a choir voice at that point. You gotta open that up. Come again, sweet love, doth now invite thy graces that refrain to. And if you can do this, then it should be pretty easy to go below the E3. So I'd actually work on the in this like range, in this sort of upper third octave, work on really opening that up and getting that louder. And the range below E3 you should gain access to that as a side effect. But aside from that, you can do this kind of exercise. Ga 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 ga. I'm not a bass baritone anymore. I used to be actually. Like when I started out singing, I had, you know, at age 17, I had a strong E2, and now I don't. But yeah, I used to have a much more sort of fried lower range, like less and more except stronger. I can't do it now, but anyway, I used to have a sort of clear, crisp lower range, but I also accordingly had less sort of warmth in the third octave. Anyway, yeah, Come Again. It's a great song. It was one of the first I learned when I took classical voice teaching. I also learned the if music be the if music be the food of love, sing on, sing on, sing on, sing on, till I am filled with joy. For then my listening soul you move, for then my listening soul you move, to pleasures that can never cloy. Anyway, also a great one. And I was singing both of these in this shy, introverted manner. Come again, sweet love doth now invite. This sort of choir voice, right? Where, if music be the food of love, sing on, sing on. But this is a choir voice, right? This is a choir voice. This is not a classical solo voice. It's the mellow quality helps it blend, but it's like it sort of doesn't. It's not intriguing enough that way. Like for solo singing, it needs to be more. If less. If music be the food of love, if music be the food of love, like this kind of quality, you get tired of that after a while. Anyway, no, it's not. It's not. It's you've been misled. I don't know who told you that, but like if you read the historical text, you'll see si canta come si parla. You'll see everything like it's just not. It's not more correct. And like this darkening of the voice, which is really basically like what they're doing there is they're covering the voice, but they're also it's sort of a mixed voice they're covering. It's not like proper registration with like clearly isolated registers. It's and they're covering it, and the covering actually happened only much later when they wanted to carry the chest voice up into the high range instead of going into pharyngeal voice. They covered in the passaggio to get access to the do di petto. So the covering, like the whole sort of darkening of the sound, there's a much newer invention. Is like the choir voice is not more stylistically correct. The choir voice is something the academics came up with because they're and like it's not like I say the academics, but it's not actually based on historical sources. It's just incorrect. But they do that because they all have schizoid personality disorder, basically. Yeah, but it's not like you can do a full dynamic range with either one of these. Well, not with the choir voice, but you can do a full dynamic range with the clear quality as well, right? So I don't need to sing it that loud. If music, I can reduce the volume of it and go like. If music be the food of love, sing on, sing on, sing on, sing on, till I am filled with joy. And that doesn't require me to do this. If music be the food of love. It's kind of, frankly, fake quality. Like you can do it real and like, youthful and like, si canta come si parla, and you can do it like you can do it correctly without having to do it loudly. But yeah, it's Anyway, is it true? Let's see. Wait, hang on. Gotta. So can you give? Okay, great. Okay. Can you give a quick rundown of what differentiates the registers in my system? Yeah. Okay. I can do that. So there's the so I sort of divided into 4 different levels of skill basically. Like I sort of progressed through 4 levels. And the first level just has chest voice and falsetto, right? And the chest voice here, I'm not making any distinction between call register and chest register. You just like chest voice and falsetto. And chest voice, of course, we all know what chest voice and falsetto is, so I don't have to like belabor that point too much. Then I introduce a mixed voice, and by mixed voice I mean this kind of this sort of compressed quality, sort of SLS-esque, right? This sort of go 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 go, right? This kind of thing. So I introduced that, and that's sort of the intermediate stage. The intermediate stage is all about teaching people how to do that. And then in the advanced stage, I differentiate between, like I separate chest voice into chest register and call register. So before I just have, you know, and all of that would be chest voice, right? But at the advanced level, it's important to make this distinction. Right? That would be chest register, and it's like speaking very sort of emphatically, like this, and call register, like this. It's more spacious and it's more like a shout. Now both of these can get really loud, by the way. The chest register actually is a lower register than call register. It can also stay dark, and then it really does get very, very loud. But I can do this. Like this, right? That's still chest register. It still has a speech-like quality. Now it's very, very loud speech. Yeah, so that's the sort of advanced stage, separating the chest voice into call register and chest register, and learning to transition from chest register to call register to mixed voice as you go up in pitch, right? So that's something like. That was almost a sort of close temper call register at the top, but it was just barely mixed voice, so it will do. But let me just make the demonstration clearer with another choice of vowels, maybe. Right, so that's sort of what you're supposed to learn at the advanced stage. Then at the expert level, I take it a bit further, and I teach cry register, this kind of quality. Right, this sort of lighter sort of belty quality, and sharp register, which is basically just a spacious darker version of the same thing. This kind of thing, right? Then there's, from there I teach pharyngeal voice, which you basically develop by sliding between a very bright, light cry register and falsetto, right? So and then you have this thing here, this another kind of mixed voice basically, and then the only distinction left to draw is between falsetto and head register. Now head register isn't necessary to learn. We can skip head register for people who are not interested in it, but for people who want to learn it, the head register is basically a register that's above the falsetto, right? The falsetto has this almost speech-like quality, right? Like this, you could speak in the falsetto. It would sound a little bit odd, but it's still possible. You can speak in it, right? Whereas you can't really speak in this, because like the vowels have no distinction at all. It's all whoop timbre, right? So there's this transition here. If I go up in pitch with this quality, right? So there's the switch, right? That's falsetto. That's head register. So that switch there, that's the switch between falsetto and head registers. Now, there are people who use falsetto for breath equality, to refer to breath equality, and head voice to refer to a clear non-breath equality. I don't. Like, falsetto can be clear or breathy. It's about like the resonance tuning. It's about, you know, there's this range where you'll be relying a lot on this like really spacious shaping and the whoop timbre. And that would be the head register. And below that, you'll be using different shapings, right? If you're using an R vowel, and you wouldn't do this, right? That's not an R vowel, right? There's some point where you have to switch that, right? And so that's falsetto. And falsetto has a similar vocal tract shaping to chest voice. So if I have, you know, it's very similar. I don't have to make much change at all. So that's a quick rundown of the registers. Also, I found that it helps to close the mouth first to build up pressure before releasing into a slightly more open mouth for a pharyngeal mix. So that's just advice for mixed voice in general. You could do that for like... It's not really particular to pharyngalizing the mix. Otherwise, it becomes so splatty if I open my mouth too much before. Well, I mean, you can have a pretty large mouth opening on mixed voice if you do it high in pitch, right? Like, let's do it even higher. That's pretty high, but too early in the morning for this stuff. Hang on, maybe I just need to change the vowel a bit. Yeah, that's a bit better. So you can use a large mouth opening with mixed voice. Just gotta do it at a high pitch. Anyway, is it true what CVT said about not pouting? No, it's not true. This is like, it's actually very helpful for getting closed vowels into chest register, right? Ooh, and especially back vowels. Ooh, oh, oh, oh. Otherwise, my only option is oh, 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 oh. To get that kind of twangy kind, I need the pouty mouth. Damn, that's loud. Hang on. Yeah. So yeah, that is loud. It's quite loud. You mean the mixed voice, right? But yeah. Well, I mean, it's high in pitch. It's a D5. So like mixed voice gets quite loud the higher you go. If you, like a D5 mixed voice is loud, unless you do a lot to make it quiet. I mean, you can do, as I sometimes demonstrate, you can raise the larynx a lot, right? That's the first thing. Or you could, well, actually, I'll let cry first. It's an easier first thing to do. So instead of go, I might do go, still pretty loud, but a bit less overwhelmingly loud, right? And then I raise the larynx. Go, wow! And now I have a very quiet mixed voice. Anyway, so how to avoid cracking in F2, H3 for countertenor singing? You mean like how to make that transition without cracking, or do you mean like the next one? That like, which transition are you, like, are you cracking on a transition, or are you cracking while trying to sing with F2, H3 tuning? How can I know if my voice is correctly compressed, and how can I know if it's incorrectly compressed? If you're using like excessive levels of effort, then like I would avoid that for most purposes. Although for like rock, you may need it for a harsh vocal tone. If we crack continuously, is it a sign that we're doing it wrong in one session? Not necessarily. It could also be a sign of just being a little bit sloppy with it, or it could be a sign of being not energetic enough. I crack pretty often early in the morning, I think, because I'm just like the my articulators and my pharyngeal constrictors are not as active as they ideally should be. Well, it's really mostly if I've gotten too little sleep for several nights in succession. Yeah, it's like, I mean, don't fear the voice crack, really. Just like I guess like in a performance, you wanna be able to avoid it, but don't fear it. If you fear it, that's when you start really getting in trouble. Anyway, what the difference physiologically between call register and mixed? So mixed voice is restraint, right? It's you get an increased medial compression and you get a stretching and thinning of the vocal folds. And the vocal tract is a little bit less active. Like all the vowels are a little bit slurred in mixed voice, or a little bit, except for the vowels that are naturally slurred, so to speak. Like an is sort of naturally a central vowel. But call register uses these spacious vowels, right? Like, well, I guess you can do in call register. It's just a different It's more of a spread, more spacious right? And this is like, these are call register vowels, which I guess would make that what I just demonstrated technically be call register. It's very weird call register though. You wouldn't usually do it with this large mouth opening at this lower pitch, but you have this space there, and that space is smaller in mixed voice. It's still somewhat there. It's still larger in mixed voice than in chest register. Mixed voice in like terms of vocal tract shaping is actually somewhere between call register and chest register. But in terms of at the vocal fold level, there's this compression and a medial compression and a stretching and thinning of the vocal folds that's not present in call register. Do you find that focusing on pronouncing consonants as they build up oral pressure, and then that pressure is then released to then form the vowel, giving... do you find that focusing on... This is like missing... there's your question there is missing a verb phrase, like an well, the like, do you find that? I don't know what you're asking. I can't parse that. Anyway, when we practice technique, do we have to do it perfect, or else it will be in the muscle memory of cracking? No. So I made I released a video yesterday that sort of repudiates this emphasis on muscle memory. Like, what I say is forget about muscle memory. Like, pretend nobody ever discovered muscle memory and you'll be way better off. Because like people who think a lot in terms of practicing for the sake of muscle memory will wind up like practicing repetitions to do the same thing over and over, and that's the slowest way to practice, and it's the most likely to get stuck, and it's also the most likely to cause backtracking. So yeah, just like forget about muscle memory. I sort of explained it more in detail in that video. But yeah, like it's just the thing about building muscle memory is it is a part of the process of learning, but it's also the part that you can take for granted more than any other part, because just in the course of singing you will get those repetitions in. You don't have to worry about actively getting the repetitions in. That will just happen. So yeah, forget about muscle memory. It's like it's not something you need to be thinking about. Is it better to flip to falsetto while practicing call register or applying the mixed voice squeeze? Let's see. I get what you're asking. It's if you're trying to learn call register, then it's better to like flip to falsetto. It's better to fail by flipping into falsetto than to fail by applying the mixed voice squeeze, because the squeeze will very likely take you out of call register and be difficult to like. The flipping to falsetto, it will be a lot easier to just find your way back to call register from there usually. And it's sort of more easily reconciled with doing call register without the squeezes. What is your thoughts on vocal warm-up and vocal cool downs? So in ordinary physical activity, I'm about to start the. So I should have mentioned this earlier. There's a Zoom weekly Zoom meeting after the live streams, which right now you're all invited to join. It will eventually be Patreon only, but it's a little bit of an experiment. I'm putting the link here. I'll just answer this question, and you can all like join the Zoom. Meanwhile, anyway, join this, and you can like hang out with me for an hour on Zoom. Anyway. When doing physical exercise, you need a warm up, because the muscles themselves need to actually physically rise in temperature to like speed up chemical processes and so on. That's not really necessary with the voice, because the voice is already warm. Like all the laryngeal muscles and so on are internal and like are at a fairly high temperature already. So there's no like so when we speak of warming up in the context of singing, it is at best a euphemism, right? It's best a kind of metaphor. It's not actually doing the same thing that a sports warm-up is doing. Now, a warm-up can sort of serve two functions. One is to like get your energy levels up a little. Like if I'm sort of feeling sluggish like this, and it's hard to sing while being, I might do yeah. Right. If this is happening, you need basically rise and shine, right? And you can warm up, like you can warm up to get that happening, or you can like drink coffee or something, and like either one, you get the energy levels, and it will help. The other thing is to activate to activate various articulator muscles a bit. Anyway. Okay, my question is this: when I produce a consonant, say, if I sort of hold the consonant and allow it to build pressure, then F. Let's just like, you can just ask it in the Zoom call. That might be easier. Hang on. Hello, you're the first one here. I'm not sure. So my screen is. I'm not sure if you can hear me. The rest of you can probably also hear me in the live chat. Anyway, people, join the Zoom group call. I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I hope to see as many of you as possible there.